Hi, my name is Keenan Hartert. I'm a professor of biology at Minnesota State University. I often use cancer bioinformatics for my research, but I also use data to find student success research in bioeducation. So in today's video, we're going to use the transform and data processing function that Prism offers. There's a lot of flexibility that you can use with a lot of these tools that we're going to see. We're going to do transform, row stats, remove baseline and column, select and transform, essentially offering you a very useful and live way to manage your data in here instead of going back and forth between your spreadsheets. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of our first examples here. So most people have watching this deal with p-values. In this case, this is a Cox regression result set from one of my old data sets that we did in another video where I said, based on these factors, which students have an inferior or better impact, basically, as in terms of failures across the semester. We found that it was highly significant that if you don't attend and if you work too many hours, you're out of luck. So if I graph these data, though, the problem is, like we've all encountered, is that p-values that are good are low down here. You essentially can't see them. You can't visualize that. We need to transform these data in a very quick and helpful way. You can go to Analyze right here, Transform. And what you're going to do is say, the best way that I can actually make my p-value showcase how many decimal places it is away from that 0 point is say -1 to the log of y, which is my function, my data right there in column A in p-values. So in this case, this is a great trick. Again, researchers use it all the time to say, hey, look, these data show me that attending class mattered in this case. That was highly significant because 1.33 is about the 0.05 equivalent here for what the function that we just transformed with. So over here, if I wanted to make a graph now I'm going to say, give me the transform over here. I don't want column, I want grouped in this case, and I want some nice bars. Now we're talking. Now we can tell, all right, attendance, this is really the one that we are saying. That's a big one right there. Same with working during school. Okay, perfect. That is a really quick way to manage your data. Again, something you can do in a spreadsheet, but if you have the capabilities with Transform, you may as well use them in Prism. So I'm going to go ahead and switch where we're sharing. I'm going to go to a different setup over here. Today, we have my giant cohort of students, their exam 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the final. We're going to show you how to use some of Prism's transform and kind of data wrangling type of stuff. So if I want to say, hey, I take this data right here and I want to transform this data, let's say that I want this in proportions, for example, I can say right here, I can do a kind of a custom setup here. If I want, I have some user-defined stuff, you have your standard stuff. And again, what I could do is say, what if I wanted to say y divided by k? So my value divided by that, instead of raw percentages, what if I did just want the decimals? We can click OK there. Perfect. And this is going to change depending on what you want, depending what fields you're in. But really quick changes like that are going to allow you to kind of avoid having to go all the way back into a spreadsheet, for example. So that's my transform. I can also, for example, look at that. It's going to graph it just like that. And instead, it's in the proportion decimal version. Instead, this is the full percent version. So that's kind of one of the capabilities. And like you saw in the transformation, you have a lot of potential there. And like I showed before, you can do some user-defined stuff. But let's also look at some other great tools in here. So if I want to say analyze data, data exploration summary, you can always do descriptive statistics. That's going to give you that big column format. So if we do this and say descriptive stats, and you can find this in there, you can add all this good stuff in here. You can get different means, things like that. You go in here, this is going to save you a ton of time because to do all of this in the spreadsheets would have taken you, making every function, things like that. Prism, so long as you got everybody in a column, done just like that. It's beautiful. So moving back into some good data analysis stuff, one of my favorite things is actually going to give me some row statistics. This is actually going to go row by row in this case, instead of like the columns like I showed you. Here's what I want with this. And this can change too with the customization. I can do a total if I wanted. I can do mean, median. I'm going to do a mean since I do have 3. It can depend on what error you want here. Again, I only have 3 of each person's exam. Again, so don't be too sad at me using standard dev here, but that's okay. And again, I can create graphs of this. I can do all kinds of fun stuff. So let's take a look at what these row stats look like. Number 1, this is going to show me right on here how I'm looking. Number two, I did have it make me a graph, and it made me this really good looking like descension right here. Now I did arrange these to descend, but I really like this. And this is actually something I really like showing, for example, my class and saying like, hey, like this is kind of what the stats are predicting, things like that. So really nice again. Let's go back to analyze, explore summary. I want to, let me find, I want to go ahead and say, row titles, data exploration, row stats. Perfect. I kind of want to compare baseline is my main thing. And I got to find, there it is, remove baseline and column math. There we go. Okay. So remove baseline and column math function is going to take us to this screen. What I want is, for example, I want to say, let's say that my first, oops, sorry, I want to do columns in this case. So I want to take columns and I want to say every other data set, or I want to select, hey, who's my baseline right here? So what I'm saying in this case is exam one, I want to say, all right, that's your baseline in class. How much did you change versus exam two and versus exam three? Now, the good news for me is that these are all in the same relative zone of a percent, right? These are all 100% to zero. I could, if I didn't have that, I could actually make, a percent value custom right here. But in this case, I'm just going to do the raw setup. So I'm also going to click right here, remove baseline itself from the results because I don't want to graph group A minus group A, which is going to be 0 every time, right? So here's how to label everything. I'm going to go ahead and just say column, A minus B, B minus A. We could save title only. I'm gonna go ahead and try this. So if we push this through right here, this is making the assumption that, for example, student one, this column is blank because I removed it because that's what we're comparing and getting these numbers from. So student one had an exam score that was whatever number it was. It got 18% higher on exam two, and it was 16% higher than this old exam score on exam three. So now what we can do though is you can see who fell, for example. Oh, shoot, a lot of fallers. Who gained though? Who fell really hard? Dang it. And et cetera, et cetera. So having this baseline set up here is going to be pretty nice. You can technically graph this too. I like to take this data sometimes. I don't know if this is going to give me exactly what I want, but let's go ahead. I do kind of want to see, yeah, mean with standard deviation of my total differences here. So what this is going to give me is essentially difference from exam one to exam 2%. Yeah, it kind of fell right there because there's my mean right there. And then differences of exam one to the final exam. Yeah, it kind of fell again. But this is a very clean, very quick way to move data, subtract it, divide it, whatever you want to do from a certain set of baseline data and say, what changed? Let's keep moving on some other data processing and exploration setups. And so what I would like to actually kind of take a look at is select and transform, my final setup that I want to show you this. So this one's fun because you can select who you want in this case and kind of just graph a set of data. So in this case, let's say, so the columns I want to keep. So I want to select rows. I want to select variable versus value in this case. I want to say that for exam one, for exam two, and exam three, I want to find rows and graph them and examine them if you never passed an exam. All right. So if this is lower than a 70 in each case, I want to explore this. What this is going to produce is a new set of data, a fresh set of the 64 people in this class that did not ever actually pass an exam. And that can help me identify things. I can graph this data now as a more like, I can use this data set to say, like, I'm going to show just these ones that never passed, maybe examine them a little closer. Lastly, if I wanted to select and transform data and say, maybe instead for select rows, I want to say variable versus variable. And I want to say, I only want to see people that improved from exam one to exam two. Let's take that. Ready? There it is. So see all these people right here only improved from exam one to exam two. Not a ton, can't lie. exam 3 is still included in this case, but my logic was you need to have improved each time. My last piece is going to be, again, you can keep extending this and you can do custom transformations, whatever you need. In this case, you can user define. It's really helpful. You can transform in real time. I love this tool because of the select function where I'm going to say these two over here. I want to see who overperformed on each exam from their first one. And so these are people that recovered from a really rough exam to actually improve each other time. So very fun, great setup with Prism to manage your own data and arrange it and analyze it, transform it. Do explore it with some data you're familiar with because you'll be able to have some sanity checks and really power through this really well. And really excited to share this stuff with y'all.